Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 27th day of December 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. And up first, we've got, if I can get this into motion, there we go, hazardous weather graphic. Up there on the Arctic coast, winter storm warning out until midnight tonight for snow, blowing snow. West winds gusting 35 to 50 miles an hour, resulting in the blowing snow, and that'll reduce visibilities down to half mile or less at times. Seeing pretty strong gusts up there this afternoon. Kaktovik actually earlier today, around midday, had wind gusts of 62 miles an hour there at Barter Island, and 30 to 40 miles an hour on the eastern stretch of the coastline there, farther back toward Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse. Otherwise, the other red shaded area there, St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast, that is a blizzard warning that is out until noon Tuesday for 4 to 6 inches of snow with the incoming system, winds gusting to 55 miles an hour with the 4 to 6 inches of new snow. That'll create whiteout conditions, very low visibilities during that time frame. That'll be later tonight, and that'll be out through noon tomorrow. And then the tan shaded area there, that's a winter storm watch, or actually a heavy snow watch there for the northwest coast, Shishmaref, northern Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue, Selawik, Kobuk Valley, northern Koyukuk Valley, Bettles area. That's for heavy snow, and that's Tuesday afternoon. The watch kicks into effect Tuesday afternoon and continues through Tuesday night until 6 a.m. Wednesday, and could see 6 to 9 inches of snowfall in these areas, with as much as 12 inches. Heavier amounts will be on the southern slopes of the western Brooks Range there, along mountain areas. So that's for heavy snow, and that's a watch as opposed to a warning, not imminent or occurring, but a pretty good likelihood that may kick in here with the next system. And then the yellow shaded area, that's a winter weather advisory that's out through Tuesday for snow and freezing rain for the Yukon Delta, lower Yukon River Valley there, and then the coastline there around Norton Sound. Norton Bay area could see up to 4 to 6 inches of snow, and there could be periods of freezing rain to go along with that, just to make things interesting. And from there, we'll move on to some high temperatures at mid-afternoon today in the last 24 hours. Unalaska, pretty warm, 57 degrees, definitely shirt sleeve weather there, and they had some sunshine today to go along with that. Seward jumped up to 52 degrees with mild north wind blowing there, and that may be the warmest temperature they had since around the end of October, early November or so. And Delta Junction up to 47 degrees at least. These may not be the actual highs, but they were mid-afternoon they're lower up there at mid-afternoon. These occurred earlier on up there around Delta Junction. 40 at Fairbanks, for example, earlier today. They're much colder now. Nenana was up to 44 degrees. It's kind of a mild period up there in the Tanana Valley. And moving on, satellite imagery, you can see moisture moving eastward there, a warm front just north of Bethel and extending up over the northern Bering Sea. Not a lot of precipitation with that. Anywhere from, 3/10 of an inch, say, fell at Cape Newenham when that moved through earlier there, back in earlier frames here. And also Dillingham picked up about 3/10 of an inch of rain, while the lower Kuskokwim River Valley area had 1 to 2/10 of an inch of rain or snow, or some cases maybe even freezing rain there. And that's about it. Much lighter amounts off to the east. And you can see the cirrus shield there spreading in toward or across Yakutat there, trying to push into the northern panel and diving off to the southeast again. Another mass of moisture coming up toward the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, after the sun breaks today. And then the main precipitation producing cloudiness back out toward AKwx and westward east, just east of Shemya there, back edge of the front. AKwx picked about 0.6 of an inch of precipitation with that. And some pretty gusty winds. Cape Newnham had winds gusting to 47 miles per hour today. And again, up on the eastern Arctic coast, that's where the winds were the strongest, with Barter Island recording 62 miles an hour. And for running this through one more time, those winds up there will improve overnight tonight, again with the winter storm warning ending at midnight. And for the Panhandle, just variably cloudy, dry, still cold tonight, below freezing probably through the day tomorrow in most areas. Then you'll warm up on Wednesday with some milder air coming in. The system develops off the coast there. Otherwise, for today, high pressure in over the north slope, and the gradient between that high center and then the couple of low centers off to the east there over eastern Mackenzie River Bay, just southwest of Banks Island, one low 1,000 millibar. That created those very strong winds, 60 to 70 miles an hour again from Kaktovik, Barter Island across the coastal areas of Mackenzie River Bay and Delta. Otherwise, snow and blowing snow on the increase. Again, northern Bering Sea with that warm front, and windy, rainy, as I mentioned, 2/3 of an inch of rain falling at AKwx with gusty south winds and temperatures in the 40s, lower 50s. And some showers around the eastern Aleutians today. That'll become a general rainfall tonight as that front pushes eastward. Gusty southwest winds keeping it mild. Temperatures stay in the 40s. Rain, wind, mild temperatures around 40 for the lows for the Pribilof Islands. And then that warm front keeps the snow blowing snow as it approaches St. Lawrence Island there, but right in the heels, mixed precipitation, warmer air surging northward with that, and an area of light snow, heaviest down the west side there, Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, into the Kobuk Valley along the Yukon River there, and it becomes much lighter as you head over toward the border, probably just flurries. Dry south central Alaska, and still a little breezy there, Lynn Canal, northern inner channels, and less wind, maybe some snow showers starting to develop over the Dixon entrance area, but that at best would only clip Heidelberg if it does at all, and whatever does fall will be quite light. And then rain and snow showers behind that front for the far western Bering Sea. Moving on to tomorrow, quite a low there, it's just north of, or actually very close to Wales there, Tin City, the Bering Strait, western Seward Peninsula. So quite a bit of snow and blowing snow develops, especially the western Brooks Range to the western Arctic coast. And it should start to improve for St. Lawrence Island as winds become westerly and snow diminishes and visibilities improve, but that'll be a slow process, mostly in the latter part of the afternoon. Rain and snow showers over the Yukon Delta, rain showers Kuskokwim Delta, periods of rain Kuskokwim Valley to the Alaska Range, Bristol Bay, light rain at times, tapering off to showers for the western Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, and possibly a dry day for AKwx and Atka, maybe some breaks. Looks like St. Paul, St. George will have the best chance of seeing some breaks out that way to Nunivak Island. And variably to mostly cloudy for the eastern North Gulf Coast. And winds not too bad there for the Panhandle tomorrow, but temperatures in most areas staying below freezing. And then moving on to Wednesday, we'll see the low pressure area develops there off the south coast just west of Dixon entrance. Now nudge some warmer air and moisture up, especially along the coast. Look for your highs to start to approach 40 there, say for Sitka, and definitely into the 30s for Prince of Wales Island. Otherwise, increasing clouds, increasing moisture, increasing chance of snow, eastern areas on up toward the north, maybe some flurries, and dry for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Quite an area of light snow over the interior there, all along the Yukon River Valley. Weakening low, St. Lawrence Island, periods of light snow, but the wind's not much of a factor at all. And chance of snow southwest coast. Another push of warm air with rain moves into the Alaska Peninsula with a fairly weak low north of the Fox Islands. Mixed precipitation along the occluded front, central Aleutians, snow showers, Amchitka west to Shemya and Attu. Lows tonight, 20 to 30 below along the Arctic coast with a minus 30 reading, more likely in over the north slope. And single numbers to, or call it 5 to 15, central interior, Tanana Valley out to the Bering Strait coast, mid-teens for St. Lawrence Island, upper 20s, south central Alaska to mid-30s around Homer. Low just around, say, 40 for Kodiak and Alaska Peninsula, upper 30s to lower 40s, upper 30s, mid to upper 30s for the Aleutians. In the teens for the Panhandle, highs tomorrow, 20s to lower 30s for the southeast coast, mostly in the upper teens to mid-20s. Sitka maybe up to 31. Upper 40s, Kodiak Island, 30 to 35, south central Alaska, Homer, Seldovia, 40s, lower 40s, 15 to 20, central interior, below zero, north slope in the Arctic coast. And Wednesday morning lows, 20 to 30 below again, north slope Arctic coast in toward Arctic Village, and maybe Fort Yukon there, minus 12. In the teens for the Tanana Valley, 20s, southern Alaska, and then the highs in the 20s, 25 to 35 for the Panhandle, pushing 40, as I mentioned, near Sitka, lower 40s for the North Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island, and the Alaska Peninsula, upper 40s for Cold Bay to Unalaska, and 20 below, 15 to 20 below for your highs for the North Slope and the Arctic coast, otherwise lower to mid 30s for the western interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to flying weather, a little bit of marginal VFR eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and some IFR there from the southern slopes of the eastern Brooks Range across the Yukon Flats, right on down across the Tanana Valley, Alaska Range, and then kind of a thin band right on down into northern Cook Inlet, Mananuska sit in the valley, northern Copper River Basin. Some IFR now along the south coast of the Panhandle, marginal VFR in over the southern areas. Huge area of IFR right into the southwest interior, up across Norton Sound and the southern Seward Peninsula, back to St. Lawrence Island, southward to the Pribilofs and Fox Islands. For the afternoon, or for Tuesday afternoon, we've got that area pushing eastward there into the Kuskokwim Valley to the Alaska Range, and then northward there to the into Kotzebue, just south of Kivalina, with the marginal VFR zone almost to about Point Hope, and into the mid-Yukon River Valley, and actually in the Yukon Flats over toward the border. Brooks Range of the Arctic coast, VFR, big area of VFR from Amchitka to Unmak Island to the Pribilofs for the afternoon, and IFR, though, for the Alaska Peninsula, southern Kodiak Island. VFR for the Panhandle, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. Resurrection Bay, Seward, Whittier, Portage, most of Turnagain Arms, so Girdwood down to Homer and Seldovia, VFR. For the morning Wednesday, IFR right along the Brooks Range and the eastern interior across the Yukon Flats, and eastern half of the Copper River Basin to the North Gulf Coast, and to about Yakutat, maybe into Elfin Cove, marginal VFR, and central coast of the Panhandle, inside waters, VFR, Kodiak Island, and the southern Bering Sea, VFR, into the interior there, southwest interior. Some IFR, though, from Atka Island eastward to, looks like Nikolsky and maybe the south coast of Unalaska Island. And for the afternoon Wednesday, some marginal VFR shifts northward to the Pribilof Islands. IFR pretty widespread along the Aleutians from about Amchitka Island eastward to the Alaska Peninsula up towards Sitkinak. And looks like some marginal VFR up to about Akiak and Kodiak Island. VFR to the north. Southern Alaska VFR, marginal VFR there is IFR in the central and northern interior. Central Eastern Arctic coast looking pretty good. VFR holding through the afternoon Wednesday. Northern half of the Panhandle, marginal VFR. Southern half, IFR. North Gulf Coast, VFR. And for the passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, both looking pretty good tomorrow with VFR flying through either approach. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, and then look for conditions to deteriorate. Ceilings visibilities come down on the western entrances going toward IFR throughout the afternoon, into evening. Same pattern for rainy, same trend as well. Marginal VFR trends toward IFR as the afternoon wears on. And windy, marginal VFR at times. Isabel, marginal VFR at times. And Mentasta, the pass that's always VFR, will be VFR tomorrow. And Tanita, marginal VFR to start, and then VFR for most of the day into the afternoon. Portage, VFR, and Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels 2,000 feet up into the central Seward Peninsula, the Bering Strait, 4,000 feet to St. Lawrence Island, and 6,000 feet up north of the lower Yukon River Valley and the Delta areas. 8,000 feet into Bristol Bay, 10,000 feet to about Sand Point. Icing, areas of considerable moderate rime icing there up over the northern Bering Sea into the lower Yukon River Valley and western Kotzebue Sound areas. Another batch there just south of the Fox Islands. And now the jet stream, southwest flow up to 140 to 145 knots, the core of the jet there right across just east of Amchitka Island. and right up in toward Togiak, Kuskokwim Bay areas, diminishes, turns westerly, and then north-northwesterly, still 125 knots, blowing right across the central panhandle. 9,000 feet, looking more westerly across the Bering Sea, about 40 to as high as 70 knots as you get in toward Cape Neuenham, and then back to 60 knots crossing the western Alaska Range, and northerlies at about 40, north-northwest 40 for the southeast coast. Much lighter winds over the panhandle at 3,000 feet. Much windier up over the northern Bering Seas, high 65 knots just north of St. Lawrence Island. Then easterlies, there are 55 knots over the Chukchi Sea. And taking a look at turbulence, considerable moderate chop, quite a gradient. So western Alaska Range to the Long Mountains, Kivalina up to about Point Lay will be pretty bumpy tomorrow with light to isolated moderate turbulence southward in the interior there to the Bristol Bay and Alaska Peninsula.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
The Space Weather Prediction Center has had a long-standing relationship with the power industry, so they've been aware that solar storms, the geomagnetic storm piece of that, can affect the operation of their systems and induce extra currents and loads on those systems that can either trip those systems offline or in the worst of cases, cause damage. That relationship goes back for several decades. In fact, a big incident in 1989 where part of Quebec was tripped offline that affected something like 6 million customers for about 9 hours. I think that really raised the awareness in the power industries.
When we get the alert, we watch the grid and start looking for issues. Are we seeing a decline in voltage? Are we seeing equipment failures? And we readjust the system to try to mitigate those problems, try to keep the lights on and keep it from going out.
Averaging about 500, 550 kilometers per second.
If we didn't have this early warning, we wouldn't see it until our sensor saw it. Getting more information quicker and faster before the storm hits, not during the storm, is a big improvement.
In the long term, I think what we need and what we're moving toward, the U.S. as a whole, is better modeling, fully understanding this phenomenon, understanding how it would impact specific systems.
Rather than actually experiencing a storm, we can simulate storms in our software and see what the impact is. We try to get ahead of it. We always plan that if there's an outage, how can we keep the lights on? What's the best process to prevent it?
In the end, 5-10 years from now, there's going to be a whole mix of operational procedures driven by what we do on prediction and warning. And then there also will probably be some level of hardware controls to ensure the reliability of the grid.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
There's different types of impacts on communication systems, and the HF we call the high frequency, which is that band of communications 3 to 30 megahertz. But it's a very important band of radio communication because it's used widespread. It's used, for example, by the airlines.
HF radio is most commonly used for position reporting when you're going across the ocean airspace, which is devoid of radar. And ATC can't see you, so it's up to you to report your position and your altitude and your speed.
HF works great most of the time, except during a big flare. And during a big flare, that HF communication capability could be gone within a minute or two. So as soon as we see something happening in there, or we see a flare, it's one of the first things we do is alert the aviation community, hey, big flare, HF's going to be impacted.
Once we know that there's an event going on, then the aviation industry and the airlines can react to that. They can alter their routes over the poles. They can lower the altitudes that they're flying at, or maybe decide not to fly at all in the interest of the passenger safety.
So that's just one example of how HF is used, but the emergency response community will use it a lot too. It's one of their primary backups.
When you've lost connectivity between certain government agencies, it gives you that long-range coverage to talk from out-of-state to federal governments or from the FEMA locations to the state emergency operations centers.
So if you've got a big hurricane impact in the coastline, whatever big city, we've got the cell towers down and whatnot, we've got emergency communication folks in there. Those folks are very familiar with space weather and how it impacts their systems.
Here in recent years, it was used during Katrina when we had a lot of communications outages down there. It was also used during Hurricane Ike. There was an outage of the telephone circuits with the Texas State Emergency Office, so it was used in both of those situations.
So when we talk about backup, especially for the airlines, typically they'll have SATCOM, so that'll be satellite communication.
The satellite technology that emergency responders use could be GPSs, could be satellite phones, satellite data terminals.
Space weather events can impact SATCOMs. The impact can range from a nuisance to loss of a spacecraft. So we will give them the heads up. If we have space weather events, flares, whatnot, they need to know what's impacting their systems. Situational awareness is key. Time is of essence to these folks. Again, it's life and death.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Back, pretty light winds for the north or eastern North Gulf Coast, north coast of the Panhandle tomorrow. 10 knots out of the north or northwest, seas just under 10 feet. And for the south coast, north to northwest winds 15 knots with 9-foot seas. Clarence Strait, light northwest breeze at 10 knots with slight seas, and 20-knot northwest winds for Stevens Passage. And Lynn Canal, small craft advisories, northwest winds 25 knots, seas 5 feet. And then the outlook for Wednesday, Lynn Canal, north 25, seas 5 feet, north 20 for Stevens Passage. And pick the winds up and make it southwest for Clarence Strait, 20 knots, seas up to 4 feet. Gale warnings for the south coast of the Panhandle, north to northwest winds sustained at 35 knots with seas as high as 23 feet. Small craft advisories for the north coast there, along the north coast, northwest winds at 30 knots. Prince William Sound, west winds 30 knots with 8-foot seas, and northwest 25 with 12-foot seas from Middleton Island. For the Barren Islands and western North Gulf Coast, look for west winds at 30 knots with 10-foot seas. Kamishak Bay and Southern Cook Inlet, south winds 20 knots, 5-foot seas. North of the Foreland, south winds at 15 knots. And then for Wednesday, north winds 10 knots for Northern Cook Inlet and about 15 knots south of the Foreland, seas up to 3 feet in the ice-free areas. Small craft advisories for Kamishak Bay, northwest winds 25 knots, west winds at 30 knots for the Barren Islands, and small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast. Northwest winds 25 to 30 knots, 10-foot seas, and Prince William Sound, northwest at 20 with 4-foot seas. Kodiak Island, small craft advisories, southwest winds 25 knots, and then gale warnings for the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, winds south 35 knots, Pacific side, south 25 knots, Bristol Bay, small craft advisory, southwest winds at 25 knots, seas at about 5 feet. And for Wednesday, east winds 20 knots for Bristol Bay with 4-foot seas, the Alaska Peninsula south to southeast winds 30 knots, 20-knot winds from Castle Cape to Sitginak from the south, and small craft advisories for the east side of Kodiak Island for southwest winds 25 knots and 8-foot seas. Out west to the area from Shimia to Kiska, southwest winds 30 knots, and Chitka Island south at 30 knots, Adak and Atka, southwest 20 to 25 knots, Unamak Island, west winds 25 to 30 knots, and Unalaska Island, southwest at 30. Small craft advisories for the Fox Islands continue on Wednesday for south to southwest winds at 28 to 30 knots, and Adak and Atka south winds 15 to 20 knots, west 20 from Chitka Island, and 30 knot westerly winds in the forecast from the area from Kiska to Shimia. For the Pribilof, southwest winds on Tuesday at 30 knots, 13-foot seas. Small craft advisories, southwest coast, south 30 knots, and gale warnings for the northern Bering Sea, St. Matthew Island, southwest at 35 knots, 30 knot southwest winds for the St. Lawrence Island area. Those come down to 20 knots there for St. Lawrence Island on Wednesday, and the Yukon Delta coast, southeast winds at 20 knots, and east at 20 for the area south of Nunivak Island, east 20 knots for the Pribilofs. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, lighter winds tomorrow. West 15 to 20 knots, down considerably, especially for Barter Island, Kaktovik, and the central coast north at about 15, but increasing winds, western Arctic coast, Point Lay, southwestward there, 30 knot winds, and then 40 knot gale force winds for the area from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort. And then for Wednesday, east winds 20 knots for the far eastern Beaufort Sea coast, otherwise central and east side of the coastline there, northeast at 10. Brisk wind advisories, western Arctic coast, northeast 25 knots. That extends down to Cape Thompson, and then Cape Thompson to Wales will be westerly at 20 knots. For tonight, blizzard warning continues for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast at least this evening, and then winds start to diminish and drop off. Otherwise, the North Slope Arctic coast, not too bad. Area of snow, central interior, mixing with rain as you head southwest. Rain over the southwest interior, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, rain and snow into the Kuskokwim Valley, but pretty light. Windy, wet conditions, eastern Aleutians to the Pribilofs, pushing northward towards St. Lawrence Island, and more snow and blowing snow northwest part of the state tomorrow, with light snow or flurries as you get over toward the eastern border. Rain or rain and snow mix depending on your latitude there over the southwest part of the state, and dry and still chilly for the Panhandle. Outlook for Wednesday, better chance of some snow there for the Panhandle and areas of snow over the western interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.